The ancient red dragon, Dragotha, howls in pain as the death blow resounds through his body, and he collapses stone dead upon the cavern floor. As the din of battle fades, and you stand victorious, you look out through the glittering caves and the mountains of gold and gems that have been stashed here for generations. Not only is there enough gold to fund kingdoms for ages, but there are the storied legends of the ancient weapons, armor, and magic items that Dragotha has hoarded here since ancient days.
A hammer quivering with energy lays amongst the treasure, as well as a glistening sword shining with radiant power, and a staff crackling with magical energies. These one-of-a-kind items light up the hoard of treasure before your eyes. Do you dare take up their power?
Greetings! My name is Monty Martin.
And I'm Kelly McLaughlin.
And we are the Dungeon Dudes. Welcome to our channel, where we discuss everything Dungeons & Dragons, including advice for players and guides for dungeon masters.
We upload new videos every Thursday, so please subscribe to our channel so that you never miss an episode.
Today, we are taking a look at the 5 most powerful legendary weapons in Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition.
These items are ones for high-level parties to pick up and face the gods themselves with their might.
These one-of-a-kind items are the dream of every adventurer. Player characters that get a glimpse inside the Dungeon Master's Guide can only imagine the power and excitement that comes from wielding one of these weapons, and awarding them as treasure is the perfect capstone for your campaign as your player characters gear up to take on the final villain and the ultimate challenges of the game.
Nothing feels better than wielding a character-defining item that just amps that play level up even higher towards the end of a campaign. Today we're going to discuss 5 of the most powerful legendary magic items, how to use them, who they're best suited for, and some lore that you can attach to them as well.
Now, we've gone through all of the legendary items found in the 5th edition Dungeon Master's Guide. I also surveyed some of the magic items that have been added in subsequent campaigns, such as Tomb of Annihilation, Waterdeep Dragon Heist, and others. However, we have excluded a few magic items from consideration, namely artifacts, named weapons that are associated very strongly with the story, as well as intelligent magic items as well. Generally because these items tend to include more problems for the DM in integrating them into the story and the lore of your world, whereas the other items that we've looked at are a little bit more generic and can be tailor-made to fit perfectly for your player characters, your storyline, and your campaign world as a whole.
It goes without saying that the items that we're presenting in this video all require attunement and are best suited for high-level play. They should be awarded to characters that are level 17 or over. You can award them to lower-level parties, but that's going to make it much more difficult to give them challenging encounters. There's a lot to discuss, so let's get rolling.
This ancient two-handed maul crackles with thunderous power, forged in the name of deities of the tempest, the sky, the storm, and lightning. The Hammer of Thunderbolts is the first legendary magic item we are taking a look at today, and you can find it on page 173 of the Dungeon Master's Guide.
This weapon is a two-handed maul that gives you a +1 bonus to your attack and damage rolls.
Now, you can attune to the Hammer of Thunderbolts only if you are wearing the Gauntlets of Ogre Power and a Belt of Giant Strength, a very unique requirement amongst magic items that actually requires you to collect several other items in order to attune to it. But once you have attuned to it, the true power of the Hammer of Thunderbolts unlocks and is at your disposal.
When you attune to the Hammer of Thunderbolts, your strength score increases by 4, which allows you to actually exceed 20, but not 30. On top of that, if you roll a natural 20 against a giant, they have to make a DC 17 Constitution saving throw or die.
That's an amazing property on its own, but the Hammer of Thunderbolts has one more awesome trick. It has 5 charges, which are regained by 1d4 + 1 each day. You can spend one of the charges to throw the Hammer of Thunderbolts as a thrown weapon with a range of 20 feet or a long range of 60 feet. You make an attack roll against the target as normal, but once it hits, it sends a thunderclap audible out to 300 feet, and the creature you hit and every creature within 30 feet of it have to make a DC 17 Constitution saving throw, or they become stunned for 1 turn.
This basically turns you into Thor from the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
All you need are a pair of boots of flying. Sounds perfect for a high-level barbarian or Tempest Domain cleric. Even a fighter would really love this combination of items.
Definitely, and this is for those characters who just really want to hit hard and love the idea of using this big hammer to just smash giants. Perfect in a campaign where giants are one of the major villains.
Now, some of you may be thinking, but hold on, the Boots of Flying, the Gauntlets of Ogre Power, the Belt of Giant Strength, and the Hammer of Thunderbolts all require attunement, and a character can't attune to 4 magic items, can they? Interestingly enough, the Hammer of Thunderbolts only requires the character to wear the Belt of Giant Strength and the Gauntlets of Ogre Power. Attunement to those items is not required to attune to the Hammer of Thunderbolts. In addition, some of the Sage Advice columns and tweets have recently confirmed that if you are wearing a Belt of Giant Strength, the bonus from the Hammer of Thunderbolts can be applied after the belt sets your strength score even higher. So by using these items together, it is possible to max out your strength, getting a strength score into the 20s and maybe even as high as 30, depending on the type of belt of giant strength you're wearing. Or of course, you could just be a 20th level barbarian that has a strength of 28 with this hammer.
Yeah, I think Jeremy Crawford went on record and said that if you do the Belt of Fire Giant Strength as well as the Hammer of Thunderbolts, you can get a strength of 29.
Yeah, and if you have a Belt of Storm Giant Strength, you can get a 30.
That's crazy. I can't even imagine how strong a character with a strength of 30 is.
It's like having a +6 weapon, basically.
Yeah. One thing that I love about this weapon that I actually don't think Dungeons & Dragons does enough of is the fact that this weapon builds up. You have to obtain the Gauntlets of Ogre Power and the Belt of Giant Strength in order to wield this weapon. There's a really cool concept that I like here where you give a party the Hammer of Thunderbolts early on. It's just a +1 maul. And then throughout the campaign, they have this mission to find the Belt of Giant Strength and the Gauntlets of Ogre Power in order to unlock the true potential of this legendary weapon.
I love this idea because giving a +1 maul out to a low-level party is not a problem at all. And you can have the party then later discover that this maul that had all these, maybe the etchings on the handle and the hammer were covered over by rust, and they repair the hammer, they take it to a sage, they discover what it is, and then they have an entire adventure-spanning quest to unlock its true power. I think that makes it a really rewarding item, and I'd be really interested to explore ways that other magic items could work this way, because it kind of creates like a magic item set.
There is the potential downside to this item, though. With a throwing distance of 20 feet or 60 feet, it means that if you don't want to get hit in the radius of that thunderclap that is 30 feet, you're going to have to throw it with disadvantage at a longer range. Otherwise, you're going to be stuck in that as well.
But when you have a +10 modifier to throw that hammer on top of your proficiency bonus, do you really care about disadvantage?
As the first paladin lay her sword down in front of a chorus of angels descending from the heavens, the archangels gifted upon her a blade forged in the heavens themselves, made from shimmering, radiant energy. They granted her the Holy Avenger.
The Holy Avenger is the most revered and sacred weapon amongst all paladins, regardless of their oath, and you can find its rules on page 174 of the Dungeon Master's Guide. The Holy Avenger takes the form of any sword you want. It could be a long sword, a short sword, a great sword, or even a rapier, and it confers a +3 bonus to attack and damage rolls made with the weapon.
On top of that, if you're attacking undead or fiends, you get to do an additional 2d10 radiant damage to those enemies.
It is an incredibly potent weapon against the favored foes of paladins, and means that Divine Smite against a high-level fiend or undead will just get annihilated by a paladin using this weapon.
What's really terrifying to me is this idea of a level 17 paladin, which can already ramp up so much damage. Putting this weapon in their hands is just going to drive that home to make them one of the heaviest hitting classes in the whole game if they have this weapon in their hands.
However, if the damage of the Holy Avenger wasn't enough, it has another powerful property that speaks to the Paladin's true nature as a protector and defender and leader of their allies. For the Holy Avenger emits an aura that grants all the allies of its wielder advantage on saving throws against spells and magical effects. And when wielded by a level 17 Paladin, the range of this aura extends to 30 feet. That alone is pretty powerful until you also consider that paladins have their own protective aura trait, which grants themselves and their allies their own charisma modifier to saving throws as well, out to a similar radius. This means that the allies of a paladin wielding the Holy Avenger gain the paladin's charisma modifier to saving throws against spells and magical effects that they then also gain advantage on those saving throws against, which means putting a Holy Avenger in the hands of your party's paladin is effectively giving your party a massive defensive bonus against enemy spellcasters and magic users.
So +5 to all of your saving throws with advantage. Not bad.
Add to this if you're an Oath of the Ancients paladin and your aura also grants your party resistance to the damage from spells, and that Lich Lord is not looking like a very scary enemy now. A curious item in the treasure hoard. A tarnished rapier with silver filigree. Doesn't seem to be anything special, but powerful magic lurks within. For this is the Luck Blade, the favored weapon of gamblers, rogues, and those who want to see all their dreams come true.
You can find the Luck Blade on page 179 of the Dungeon Master's Guide. This blade can take the form of any sword you'd like and grants you +1 to your attack and damage rolls, as well as +1 to all of your saving throws.
That doesn't seem too special, but it also gives you the ability to, once per day, re-roll an attack roll, ability check, or saving throw that you don't like the result on. But if you're very lucky, your Luck Blade might have something else hiding inside it.
The Luck Blade can be found with 1d4 -1 charges in it, and you can use an action to cast the Wish spell using one of these charges.
You can only do this once per day, and once the sword has run out of charges, this property is gone, but the other properties remain. It does not recharge its charges of Wish. But oh man, the things you can do with even a single wish.
Even one cast of the Wish spell can be game-changing, usually only set aside for characters that can cast 9th level spell. Putting it inside a blade makes this item worthy of this list.
Of course, if you do happen upon a Luck Blade with more than one wish inside it, you have found a truly fantastic treasure indeed. I think the Luck Blade is a very interesting weapon because on its own, it's not really anything special, but it does have a very awesome and strategic power to it by giving the party one or more wishes. And so sometimes I am tempted as a dungeon master to award it to a party somewhere between 11th and 16th level before they gain access to the wish spell, but only giving them one just to see what they do with it.
Once you have a party that already has access to the Wish spell and can cast 9th level spells, that's when I would award them a Luck Blade that maybe has more than one charge available in it.
Putting the Wish spell in the hands of your player characters is always a risk, but the Luck Blade does allow you as a dungeon master a little bit of control over it, and I find that when players are given the Wish spell as a magic item, either in a scroll or with the Luck Blade itself, they tend to think about how they can use it in much more creative and open-ended ways, as opposed to just using it over and over again to replicate higher level spells. Some players and characters might do that and might end up using the Luck Blade to do something crazy, like create a simulacrum of themselves, or clone themselves, or teleport across the world or to another dimension.
What I love doing with all of these items that we're talking about is imagining what sort of adventure could play into it. And I think the Luck Blade is one of those things that a party would quest for if they needed a wish to solve that world-ending problem. Maybe they need to travel to another dimension or an alternate plane, and they don't have access to the ability to do that, but they can find the Luck Blade and get there.
I think the Luck Blade is another excellent candidate for making an intelligent weapon, because adding that little bit of subjectivity to the wish that the Luck Blade grants might make the party consider very carefully how they word their wish.
If the Luck Blade has a voice and 3 charges, you've basically put a genie in a blade.
If a manxome foe you seek, you'll want to arm yourself with this next legendary weapon. 1-2, 1-2, and through, the Vorpal blade goes snicker-snack. Your foe's left dead, and with their head, you'll go galumphing back.
The Vorpal blade can be found on page 209 of the Dungeon Master's Guide, and gives you a +3 bonus to attack and damage rolls, as well as ignoring resistance to slashing damage.
The Vorpal Blade is inspired by Lewis Carroll's classic tale of the Jabberwock, found in Alice's Adventures Beyond the Looking Glass. This powerful weapon has one property. If you roll a natural 20 on your attack roll, it lops off the target's head, killing it instantaneously. However, a creature that is immune to slashing damage, could survive without a head or does not have a head at all, or that has legendary actions, is immune to this effect and instead suffers an extra 6d8 slashing damage.
This blade is so much fun. What I love about it is it doesn't automatically give the player something that's going to wreck the game, but what it does do is gives them that small chance to just nullify a powerful enemy. You can't take out a legendary creature with it, but those big monsters that are coming at you that have a head, that chance of rolling a 20 and just cutting its head clean off is so cool.
And what a cinematic moment as well. The sight of that magical weapon glinting for the moment when the true strike happens, that fatal blow that decapitates the mightiest enemy in a single stroke. It is worth noting that, like the Hammer of Thunderbolts, the Vorpal Sword's ability only triggers when a natural 20 is rolled on the attack roll. It isn't tied to making critical hits. This means that its power cannot be activated by an effect that would cause an automatic critical hit. For instance, if it was wielded by an assassin rogue attacking with surprise, or by a fighter attacking a paralyzed or unconscious enemy. It does need to be a true natural 20, and even other abilities like the Champion Fighter or Hexblade Warlock that allow them to score critical hits on 19 or 20 don't modify what happens with the Vorpal Blade.
That being said, I do see this as being a good choice for a fighter in your party if you want to give them a cool weapon. They're the one who's going after the big bad guy with full ferocity.
It's great for a fighter because a fighter does make 4 attacks around at high levels. So their odds of rolling a natural 20 are very, very high. So you're going to see a lot of heads getting lopped off.
Heads will roll.
In the ancient days of the world, the first great sorcerers discovering wizardry came together and forged each themselves a staff of power, one for each of the 8 schools of magic. But there was one who stood above all others, the greatest sorcerer wizard king the world had ever seen, the ultimate Magi. This great mage forged for themselves the staff of the Magi, one that would contain the power of all schools of magic and represent the greatest mortal magic user the world had ever known.
You might think that the Staff of the Magi, found on page 203 of the Dungeon Master's Guide, does not really fit in with our list of weapons, but it grants you a +2 to attack and damage rolls, so it can be wielded as a quarterstaff. It also grants you +2 to spell attacks, so it definitely fits on this list and is an appropriate item for the spellcasters in your party.
And the high-level ones at that, because its bonuses as a melee weapon are paltry compared to its potential use as an arcane weapon of power. For the Staff of the Magi comes loaded with 50 charges. It regains 4d6 plus 2 charges each day at dawn. Finally, if you expend the last charge, you roll a d20. On a natural 20, the staff regains 1d12 plus 1 charges, and it doesn't matter if you fully drain the Staff of the Magi, it will continue to regain charges. There's no chance of it wearing out if you go through all the charges.
And in fact, there is more than one way to charge up the Staff of the Magi because it has a spell absorption property. If you are the single target of a spell, you can use your reaction to absorb the spell, gaining a number of charges equal to the level of the spell cast on you. You do not want to exceed 50 charges using this ability, though, or else the staff explodes.
If you don't need to use the power, though, the Staff of the Magi also grants you advantage on saving throws against spells and other magical effects all the time anyways. And this is the important part about the Staff of the Magi, is that it can be used to make a retributive strike. You can break the Staff of the Magi, causing it to explode, dealing a ton of damage to you and everyone in a escalating range within the staff, upwards of 8 times the number of charges in the staff for those within 10 feet of the immediate explosion. When you break the staff or it explodes, you have a 50% chance of being sent to another plane of existence when you do so. So there is some risk to using the Staff of the Magi. If some sort of mind control effect gets control of you, hopefully it doesn't, and forces you to break the staff, or if you absorb a spell that is too powerful for the staff to store its energy inside. As we mentioned, it has 50 charges, and you can use the Staff of the Magi to cast spells from the staff. And there are 19 different spells stored in the staff, 13 of which use charges, and 6 of which can be used at will as an action without expending any charges whatsoever.
And now, to test Monty's knowledge of this item, I'm going to get him to name all of these spells without looking.
Okay, so the Staff of the Magi contains 13 different spells which cost charges from the staff. At 7 charges, you can cast Conjure Elemental, Lightning Bolt as a 7th level spell, Fireball as a 7th level spell, or Plane Shift. You can use 5 charges to cast Pass Wall or Telekinesis, 4 charges to cast Ice Storm, 3 charges to cast Dispel Magic, 2 charges to cast Knock, Invisibility, Web, or Flaming Sphere. These are the charged spells in the staff. The spells that you can cast without using any charges from the staff whatsoever include Arcane Lock, Detect Magic, Enlarge Reduce, Light, Mage Hand, and Protection from Evil and Good. Again, this is 19 spells total. You could cast every single spell contained within the staff once, and you would still have 5 charges remaining in the staff.
And Monty did that without looking once. You have to be a sorcerer, warlock, or wizard in order to attune to the Staff of the Magi. But for sorcerers and warlocks, this basically doubles the amount of spells that you can cast. And for wizards, pretty close to doubling.
Yeah, for those classes that have a very small list of spells known, like sorcerers who only get up to 15, getting 19 more spells added to your repertoire is insane. And for all the other classes as well, it vastly increases the number of spell slots you effectively have. Because a high-level wizard now doesn't need to worry about preparing Dispel Magic, Fireball, and Lightning Bolt. They always have those in their staff. Not only that, you get to cast Fireball as a 7th level spell, which is something that you would never do. And now you've got a 12d6 damage Fireball that you can just throw out multiple times per day.
Giving this to the spellcaster in your party is a sure way to make them the happiest player at the table. I love the lore, though, of you saying that this was created by, like, the first groups of sorcerers and wizards, and this was the most powerful. You almost went kind of a one-ring route with it, and I love that. This is the one staff to rule them all. Really, the only downside to this item is making sure that you don't go over those 50 charges with the absorption ability so that you don't explode by accident.
I do think, though, that kind of makes... Okay, so spoilers for Avengers Endgame. What a great Iron Man moment. To be a selfish Tony Stark kind of wizard. And at the end of the game, the final mode of the campaign, you sacrifice yourself.
I foresee when we look at all of these legendary items, I'm starting to imagine in my head an entire campaign where there's a known threat on its way. A world-ending event, something otherworldly, something godly that's going to destroy the entire existence of the world. and the party needs to go and obtain the items capable of fighting back. And so the adventure of the party is to locate and uncover each of these items and then wield them against a great evil. And I think that each of these has their own story, that you could make such unique and diverse adventures for each one that really takes the party to all ends of the earth to obtain such magical and powerful items.
Yeah, I think that that's a really important mindset to take with legendary items. They are legends in themselves. And for myself, I run my legendary items that only one of them exists in the entire world of each legendary item. Maybe there's a few exceptions. There's a couple legendary items that imply that there's more than one. So that's one exception. But for the most part, they're completely unique items, the likes of which the world will never see again. You could do an awesome quest, actually, where the players forge a legendary item or rebuild one. But there is only one. The players have to seek out these valuable treasures. And that makes them really special and unique and the perfect capstone to a truly epic campaign. Of course, I don't begrudge the Dungeon Master who has to build a balanced encounter for a party that has all 5 of these items.
One thing that always bothers me when we look at lists like this of such unique and incredible items is that there's no good legendary bow. We have the Oath Bow.
But it's very rare. In fact, the Oath Bow is the only magic ranged weapon that has so far been published in Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition beyond a generic +3, +2, +1 weapon. When we were going through the list of legendary items to make this episode, we were shocked at the number of swords that were on it. There were a fair number of two-handed weapons as well, but there were not any polearms, there were not any ranged weapons, and there were not very many sort of roguish weapons either. So I think that there's a pretty big gap amongst the legendary magic items that have been come out so far in Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, because a lot of them are the swordy hero types.
I would totally homebrew some of these items to be able to be either a bow or a polearm. I could see somebody doing a luck bow.
Yes, completely. And I could see a Holy Avenger that was a polearm.
Absolutely. If it seems appropriate for the character, if you have a paladin in your party who is using polearm and polearm master and all of that, and everybody else gets these legendary items and you have nothing for that paladin, I would say just give them the Holy Avenger.
Take the artistic license and change it. Over the years, I've talked to many dungeon masters who are very stingy or even a little bit cautious about awarding such high-level magic items to their players because they're worried about what it's going to do to their campaign. But when you frame a legendary magic item as a goal, as a quest that the players will be going on for a very long time, and a weapon that is needed to defeat that insurmountable threat to the entire world, it starts to become very, very grounded in the narrative of your campaign, and your players will have much more respect for its power and feel rewarded when they obtain one. And ultimately, because these are such high-level magic items, and they usually come in towards the end of the campaign, the number of encounters that you need to account for in your planning is pretty, pretty low. You might only have to deal with these legendary weapons for a few sessions towards the tail end of your campaign as it comes to a close. And they are an opportunity to create some memorable legends of your very own that your players will be telling for years afterwards.
So this has been a look at the 5 most powerful legendary magic weapons in Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. If you've used any of these items in your game, tell us about it in the comments below.
If you're enjoying the show, please consider supporting our work on Patreon. You can find out how by following the links in the description below.
Don't forget to check out our live play Dungeons of Drakkenheim, which airs Tuesday nights from 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. Eastern on Twitch. You can find all the previous episodes right up over here.
And we've got a great playlist on awarding and creating your own homebrew magic items right up over here.
Please subscribe to our channel so that you never miss an episode.
Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time
in the dungeon.